Hey, it's Brandon here. So I thought I would do a video on how not to put rear differential fluid in a Honda Pilot. So I've got a 2007 Honda Pilot. It's been a great vehicle, and shortly after buying it, I decided to change the rear differential fluid because I know it had been a while since it was done. I saw on a video somebody using a pump sprayer to change to fill that differential fluid up, and I thought that sounds like a great idea. I have one of those sitting around the garage that I could use, so I grabbed one like this that you would typically use for spot spraying, roundup, things like that around the yard, and it looked clean to me, but unfortunately, it wasn't as clean as I thought it was. So what happened is I drained the fluid out. I filled it back up and went to drive it, and I tested it out in my driveway since it's kind of steep, and I knew my front wheels would slip, so the rear wheel would engage, and it just started making this horrific grinding sound, and it was alarming to say the least. So I thought, well, what in the world would cause that? It was running fine, no issues with it before I changed it. Now all of a sudden, it's giving me all these problems. And I mean, it was like almost like a grinding, like a screeching sound whenever the rear wheels would engage. So I decided to drain that fluid and fill it again, and then it got a little bit better. And then I drained it a third time and filled it again, and then it was like pretty much back to normal. So what I learned was there must have been a little bit of contamination inside that pump sprayer, and because of that, it it just wreaked havoc on that rear differential in the vehicle. So what I did was I picked myself up one of these guys. It's just a fluid pump that is made to go into the can of differential fluid here. It takes about a gallon of differential fluid. You have to use the Honda VTM4, and this guy will go right down in there, and then you can just use a hand pump and pump it right in. It's nice and clean. And so learn from my lesson. Don't use an old dirty pump sprayer to put fluid in there. Use a good quality new. I mean, a pump sprayer would work, but you would want to use one that's clean, that hasn't been used for anything else. I'll show you what I'm working on here. And what I'm doing is my wife's Honda Pilot had a check engine light coming on for the VTM4. And what it was doing is the four-wheel drive wouldn't engage while that light was on. So I started kind of researching and found a video that somebody showed that was replacing the oil pressure sensor in the rear differential, and said that his light went out when he did that and changed the fluid. So that's what I'm going to try today, and I'll show you where that's at on the vehicle, and how to change that differential fluid while you're at it, in case you haven't done that before. Okay, here I am under the vehicle. I removed the spare tire above me because it's just a little bit in the way of being able to easily gain access to this top fill. This is the where you fill the differential, and then down here is the drain. They both take a regular 3/8 drive extension. You can use just a 3/8 drive, or I put an adapter on with 1/2 inch. That way I could get in there more easily for leverage with a bigger ratchet. Yeah, they're pretty tight to begin with. So you just remove the top one to make sure that you can get that off before you would try to remove the drain plug itself. So you take the top one off, and then you remove the bottom one, might be a little tighter. Oh, before I remove the bottom one, I'm going to show you where that sensor's at. So right, just to the right of the drain plug, there's a bushing right there. Below that, okay, right here is like a cap over top of that sensor, and there's a little electrical connector. I think you remove 3 10mm bolts around that. That allows that sensor to be removed. It's online for only about 15 bucks. So I figure that's worth a try, and I'll swap that out, fill it back up. So when I go to fill it back up, all I would do is tighten this back up, torque it. You'll have to look for the torque specifications. I don't have them with me right now. And then fill the top up with that pump it in there until it starts flowing out. Put your cap back on, torque it down, and then you're good to go with having known that your fluid's full. And then at that point, you would just try it out, see if that works. If you're getting that VTM4 light, hopefully it goes out. I'll let you know if mine does. Okay, so getting that cover off of the sensor wasn't real difficult, but it was a little tricky. I just used a 10mm ratchet wrench to reach up in between that cover and part of the unibody, I guess you would call it, to remove those screws. And then I found right behind it was the end of this. So I just used a little right angle pick tool to be able to lift up and pull that plug off of the sensor. So it's a little tricky, but I just where it was plugged onto it, I just took the pick tool, lifted, wiggled, and kind of pulled, and then it slid right off. This is the old sensor. This is the new one, nice and shiny. And to get in there, there's not a lot of clearance for the socket. So this socket just fits on here, and then this would be flush with the end of that unibody, I guess you would call it, cross member or whatever on the vehicle, to where this will slide, the socket will slide right up and on, and then you have just enough room to put your ratchet on there, break it loose, and then I had to take a screwdriver and pop the socket off, get the ratchet out of the way, and then just unthread the sensor by hand, and I'll have to do opposite when I go to put it back in. So it's like I said, you have to have just the right length socket. I just so happened to have one. It was 1/2-inch drive, 19mm by 1.5 inches long. If it's a deep well, you won't be able to get your ratchet in there, and if it's shorter than that, the ratchet won't reach, and you can't fit an extension in there. So you almost have to have this exact size socket. This one happens to be a Craftsman 12-point socket. I said it is a 19mm, so that's the size you're going to want to use to be able to get that out. Now time to put it back in. Okay, so I just got the new sensor threaded back in. The harness plugged back on, got the cover back on it, and the 3 10mm bolts back in there, tightened up. I just filled up the fluid with the pump there, and I would say it uses it's probably about a quart or quart and a half of fluid left in this when I'm done. So I took the last time I changed it, what was left in there, put it in here, and I would say after one more change, I'll have a full gallon to do another one. So save a little bit of money there eventually. I also wanted to note, we talked about this 19 millimeter socket that you need. I found an alternative. Okay, so we know that this socket is 1.5 inches, and it needs to be like about exactly that length in order to fit the ratchet in there. There's an alternative that I found. If you use a spark plug socket, it's about 2.5 inches long. It will just slip in there and on the bolt, the hex head for the sensor. And this one is it's an old one I have, S&K 13/16. So it's a pretty close match to the 19 millimeter. So if you slip that right on there, you can't get a socket or a ratchet in there, of course, but you can just get a wrench on this hex part or vice grips on this knurled area here. So either one would work, just to break it loose. And then once you get it broke loose, you can just slide this out and loosen it by hand. And then when you go to tighten it back up, tighten it as far as you can by hand, slip this on, give it a little snug at the end. There is an O-ring that seals it, so it shouldn't have to be super tight. And then torque your drain plug and fill plug at 33 foot-pounds. Also replace your crush washers. So I got a little kit I bought here a while back that has a few. That's for the drain plug, and the smaller one is for the fill plug. So it's good to replace those every time you change it. I forgot one more thing I wanted to mention. If any of you guys have issues getting your spare tire cable hoist to lower, a little trick that I figured out is to take the lug nut wrench that comes out of here. This pocket, it's on the left right there. Okay, you just stick that down on this shaft, and if it's just clicking and it's not loosening and lowering that cable, what you can do is take on your spare tire underneath the vehicle, just take the valve stem cap off, let all the air out. Either remove that Schrader valve behind it, or just depress it and let all the air out of that tire. That keeps it from putting tension on that cable. And then come up here on this, either take and smack it a few times with a hammer, or take the jack, the scissor jack, out of the vehicle and use that as a blunt object if you're on the side of the road, and you can beat on that thing, and then do that a little bit as you twist it, and then all of a sudden you'll feel it come loose, and then you'll be able to lower that cable all the way down. At least that worked for me, and it was super helpful because I was going to cut the cable and have to replace it. So it saved me $90 and in a pinch if you're on the side of the road trying to get your spare tire on. That'd be a lifesaver. Okay, so my VTM4 and check engine light both were not on after I changed the sensor and the differential fluid. After driving the car for 3 days, however, both lights came back on, and then my four-wheel drive quit working again. So I checked with my code reader here, and I got multiple cylinder misfires and a cylinder misfire at each cylinder. So I deleted all those codes, and my VTM4 and check engine light went back off again, and then the four-wheel drive started working. So I think what I'm going to have to do is change my spark plugs and probably my coil packs and my ignition coils. I think that might be the culprit of why I'm getting those multiple cylinder misfires. Sometimes vehicles can be frustrating. They just test our patience. But I'm reminded in Philippians 4 verses 6 and 7 that Paul tells us to be anxious for nothing, but by prayer and supplication make your requests known to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So I'm always thankful. I try to remember to pray before I do any work, because just knowing that the Lord Jesus is with me and is going to help me and guide me through it, I don't have to worry about getting frustrated or losing my patience. So let me know in the comments whether that works for you guys, or whether you get really frustrated when you're working on cars and do like I used to do, throwing wrenches and stuff. Appreciate you guys. Take care, and God bless.